I sat down for coffee not long ago with a man who had just turned 61. He spread his Social Security statement on the table like it was a medical chart. He kept rubbing his knuckles while we talked, the way a man does when his body has been sending him invoices for 20 years and he has stopped acting surprised by them. He looked at me and said, "Warren, the government says if I wait until 70, I can get another $800 a month, but by 70, I may not be able to climb into an RV, let alone enjoy it." He was a carpenter, not an office carpenter, a real one, scaffolding knees back winter mornings, the kind of work that turns strong men into careful men by the time they hit 60, and the software did not know that. The calculator gave him a clean little answer, a break-even age, a crossover point, a tidy recommendation. It assumed he would still be mobile enough to spend happily at 72. It assumed his body would cooperate with the spreadsheet. It assumed his life would behave like a formula. That is a spreadsheet wearing a costume. I like math. I have spent most of my life around numbers. I trust arithmetic. But I have also lived long enough to know that when a clean number collides with a real human life, the number usually wins the argument and loses the truth. That is what happens with Social Security. People keep turning it into a puzzle about one variable, claim at 62 or claim at 70, take the smaller check now or the larger check later. Run the break. Even line find the optimal answer, pretend there is one. There is not one. There is a body, there is a spouse, there is a tax code, there is inflation, there is market risk, there is the difference between being alive and being able to live. If you are somewhere between 55 and 65 right now, tired, confused, and quietly worried that everyone else seems to understand this decision better than you do, let me save you some time. Most of them do not. They know one number. They do not know the machine behind the number, and if you make this call without understanding the machine, you can lock in damage that follows you and your spouse for the rest of your lives. Let me begin with the piece everyone has heard and almost no one fully respects. For anyone born in 1960 or later, full retirement age is 67. That is the benchmark. If your full benefit at 67 would be $2,000 a month and you claim at 62, you do not take a small haircut. You take a permanent 30% reduction. Your $2,000 becomes $1,400, not for a few years, not until the system catches up. For life, a lot of people hear that and shrug. They think, all right, I lose $600 a month, but I get 5 extra years of checks. I can invest it. I can use it. I can beat the system. That sounds intelligent until you look at what is really happening. The reduction is permanent, and cost of living adjustments are percentages applied to your base. That means the person with the $2,000 base gets bigger inflation adjustments every year than the person with the $1,400 base. If COLA is 3%, the higher base gets $60, the lower base gets $42. Next year, the larger check compounds off a larger number again. The gap does not stay 600. It widens. This is the first trap. Most people think they are giving up $600. They are actually giving up $600 that was supposed to grow. That sounds small at 62. It feels very different at 80. Now, I will confess something. There was a time when I found the early claim argument very appealing. Take the money early, keep your capital in your own hands, put the checks to work. If the market compounds faster than the government increase schedule, you come out ahead. That is neat. That is rational. That is also the kind of thing a man says before the real world gets involved. I have watched people try it. The plan nearly always looks sensible in the beginning. A fellow retires at 62. Let us call him Mark. His full benefit at 67 would have been $2,000. He takes $1,400 instead and tells himself he will invest the difference. He is not foolish. He knows markets compound. He understands long-term returns. He believes he is being proactive. What his spreadsheet does not know is sequence of returns risk. He retires into a weak market at 63. Stocks are down 15%. Now, the money he was supposed to be compounding is entering a machine that is coughing. At the same time, he is no longer adding from a paycheck. He is exposed. That is a very different posture from being 45 years old and buying into a correction. When you are 63, the market is not just an opportunity, it is also a source of fragility. Then the second leak opens. Healthcare, not catastrophe, not drama. The slow, expensive creep that ruins elegant retirement plans. A prescription. A specialist, a dental issue, a procedure insurance covers badly. Healthcare inflation has outrun general inflation for years, and retirement calculators love pretending that all inflation behaves the same way. It does not. That invest the difference plan is not just competing with market volatility. It is competing with a body that gets more expensive at the same moment. Your margin for error gets smaller. This is what most people miss when they say, I will just claim early and invest it. You are trading a government-backed, inflation-adjusted, longevity-insured income stream for market exposure. At the exact moment you are least able to absorb a bad opening stretch. You are not replacing $1 with another dollar. You are swapping a floor for a bet. Could that bet work? Of course, if you have plenty of assets, a short expected lifespan, very high risk tolerance, and the discipline to stick with a plan through bad sequences, it can work. But most people making the early claim decision are not doing it from a position of strength. They are doing it because they are tired. That is different. Exhaustion is not an investment edge, and this is where the conversation usually becomes dishonest. People hear a warning against claiming at 62 and translate it into some rigid little sermon that says everyone should wait until 70. I do not believe that. I believe you should understand what you are paying for when you claim early, and then decide whether the thing you are buying is worth it, because the 30% reduction is not even the whole story. If you are married and you are the higher earner, the claiming age you choose can follow your spouse long after you are gone. Let me put it plainly. If you are the higher earner in the marriage, your Social Security check is not just your retirement income. It is also a future survivor benefit. That means when you lock in a lower check early, you may be locking in your spouse's future widowhood income at the same lower level. That is the second trap. A man I will call John spent his career in logistics. Careful man, disciplined saver, good salary, retirement folder in the cabinet before most men even know where their paperwork is. He was the higher earner in the household by a wide margin. At 62, he began to worry about the future of Social Security itself. Headlines everywhere, funding concerns, depletion dates, political noise. He decided it was safer to take what was available now. So he accepted the permanent reduction. Instead of roughly $2,200 at full retirement age, he locked in something closer to $1,540. Years later, he died at 75. His wife, Sarah, had her own benefit, smaller, around $800 a month from her own work history. As a surviving spouse, she could step up to the higher of the two checks. People hear that rule and relax. They think, fine, she gets his full amount. She gets the amount he locked in, not the amount he could have had. The decision he made at 62 became the income she would live on in widowhood. He thought he was solving his problem. He was also setting her ceiling. That is why the break. Even calculator misses the point so badly for couples. It treats the claiming decision like a solo math problem. But if one spouse will probably outlive the other, and statistically one often does, especially the lower earning spouse, then this is not one lifespan. It is two, not one check, two futures tied to one filing date. If you are the higher earner, you are not deciding only how much you receive while you are alive. You are deciding what your spouse may be forced to live on after you are dead. That should change the seriousness in the room. Now let me show you the door most retirees do not even know exists. This is the part planners sometimes call the golden window. I think that name is fair. Required minimum distributions from traditional retirement accounts generally do not begin until age 73 under current law. So if you stop working at 62, 63, or 64, but do not claim Social Security yet, you may enter a rare stretch of years where your taxable income is lower than it may ever be again. No paycheck, no Social Security. No forced IRA withdrawals yet. That space is valuable. It is not dead time. It is tax planning oxygen. This is when Roth conversions can become incredibly powerful. A Roth conversion simply means moving money from a traditional IRA, where future withdrawals are taxable, into a Roth IRA, where future qualified withdrawals can be tax-free. The conversion itself is taxable in the year you do it, which is exactly why the window matters. If your income is temporarily low, you can choose to convert money at lower tax brackets than the ones that may hit you later. That means paying a modest tax now to avoid a larger tax later. Suppose you have $400,000 in a traditional IRA. Suppose you stop working around 62 and delay Social Security. If you convert $40,000 a year for 10 years during a low-income window and you stay around a 12% federal bracket, you might pay roughly $4,800 a year in federal tax on each conversion. That is not fun. It is also not the right way to think about it. The right way to think about it is this. You are buying future tax freedom at a discount. You are reducing the traditional IRA balance that will later trigger larger required minimum distributions. You are shrinking the pile that could torpedo your taxes in your 70s and 80s. You are also reducing the future income that can drag more of your Social Security into the taxable zone. That is a lot of leverage. Now here is the mistake. The moment you claim Social Security, you add another income stream into the equation. Your taxable picture thickens. Your room for low bracket Roth conversions narrows. The window does not slam shut in 1 second, but it absolutely begins to close. This is one more cost of claiming early that the simple calculators never show you. People think the trade-off is current cash versus larger future cash. It is not sometimes. The trade-off is current cash versus an entire decade of tax optimization that disappears because you started benefits too soon. John did not understand this. When he claimed early, he did not just reduce a future survivor benefit. He also gave away years of potentially cheap Roth conversions that could have lowered the household's later tax burden. He thought he was collecting early. In reality, he was crowding out strategy. Now we arrive at the penalty no retiree feels until after the spouse is gone and the return gets prepared. This one is quiet, it is cruel, and it sits inside a tax code that has been left untouched for decades. Call it the widow S penalty. Sarah thought the hardest financial adjustment after John died would be learning to live on less. She was wrong. April arrived. Her tax preparer called. She listened. Then she asked him to repeat the number. Her income had fallen after John's death. Her tax bill had risen. She thought there had to be a mistake. There was no mistake. There was a filing status change. When John was alive, they filed married filing jointly. That status carries broader tax brackets, a larger standard deduction, and more room before Social Security benefits begin getting pulled into the taxable column. After he died, Sarah became a single filer, and the provisional income thresholds that determine how much of Social Security gets taxed do not adjust in any generous, humane way for widowhood. They simply drop for married couples filing jointly. If provisional income stays below $32,000, none of Social Security is taxed. Between $32,000 and $44,000, up to 50% may become taxable. Above $44,000, up to 85% can become taxable. For single filers, the thresholds are $25,000 and $34,000. Notice what just happened. Widowhood does not cut her tax thresholds in half because expenses do not fall in half and life does not get easier. It simply hands her a narrower lane. And those thresholds were set in 1983, not indexed for inflation, not nudged upward, not modernized. 40 years of inflation have quietly made more and more retirees taxable without Congress having to openly raise taxes on benefits. That is the third trap. It is not a loud tax increase. It is a slow tax snare. Now connect that back to John S. early claim. Sarah inherited a lower survivor benefit because he filed early. Then, after his death, her filing status changed, shrinking her threshold room. Then every dollar she withdrew from a traditional IRA counted toward provisional income, which in turn caused more of her Social Security to become taxable. This is where the tax torpedo enters. That phrase sounds theatrical, but it is accurate. If you are in the zone where additional ordinary income causes additional portions of Social Security to become taxable, one new dollar from an IRA does not act like $1 of taxable impact. It can create far more. The way the formula works, an extra dollar of IRA withdrawal can cause up to 85 cents of Social Security to become newly taxable too. Now your $1 did not just make $1 taxable, it effectively turned into up to $1.85 of taxable income moving through the system. That is why retirees open their returns some years and feel as if the code is rigged. In a sense, it is not random, it is formula. And formula can be brutal when it has not been updated since Reagan was in office. This is the full stack people misclaim at 62 and lock in a permanently reduced base. That lower base compounds smaller COLAs forever. If you are the higher earner, that lower base may become your spouse survivor benefit. Claim early and you narrow your golden window for Roth conversions. Reach widowhood and filing status compresses your tax room, pull from traditional accounts, and the tax torpedo makes each extra dollar heavier than it looks. None of this appears in a free break. Even calculator, all of it is real. Now let me say the part people need to hear most. This still does not mean waiting is always right. That is where the suits get lazy. They turn a nuanced decision into a moral ranking. Early is emotional, late is smart. Take less now and you are making a mistake. Delay and you are disciplined. That is nonsense. A spreadsheet does not know how your knees feel at 6:30 in the morning. It does not know what your father died from. It does not know whether your job has become a slow demolition of your spirit. It does not know whether the next 8 healthy years are the best years you still have. And that matters. The best way I know to explain this is to stop thinking only in terms of break, even age, and start thinking in terms of phases. Most retirement researchers describe 3 broad phases. The go-go years, when you are still mobile, energetic, curious, and physically able to use money in ways that feel like life travel. Grandchildren, projects, movement, freedom. Then the slow go years, when life narrows, more appointments, less appetite for airports, less energy for adventure. Then the no-go years, when discretionary life contracts whether you like it or not. If your health, family history, occupation, or current energy level suggests your go-go years begin now and may not run all the way to 70. Then a break. Even calculator is asking the wrong question. The correct question is not, how do I maximize the biggest lifetime number on paper? The correct question is, when can I still use the money in a way that matters to me? Suppose taking $19,400 at 62 means you can leave a body-breaking job 5 years earlier. Suppose it means you can walk national parks with your spouse while your knees still cooperate. Suppose it means you can visit family, travel modestly, or simply stop living under a schedule that is grinding you down. That is not an argument against math. That is math serving reality, because a bigger check at 70 is not automatically better. If the life you wanted to fund has already narrowed by the time you get there, Money has utility. Utility is time sensitive. $1 at 62, when you can still climb, travel, drive, build, and move, is not the same dollar at 76, when every outing requires calculation. This is the piece most financial television never says out loud because it does not fit their model. The model assumes life. Your job is to ask whether that assumption is true for you. So here's how I would think about it if I were forced to make the decision again from the beginning. First, I would stop pretending there is a universal answer. There is not. Second, I would identify whether I am deciding from fear or from design. Fear sounds like this. The system may run out. I better take it now. I do not trust the headlines. I just want something. Design sounds like this. I understand the permanent reduction. I understand the survivor consequences. I understand the tax window I am giving up. I understand my body, my spouse, my savings, and my likely go window. And after looking at the full picture, I still prefer to claim now. Those are not the same decision. One is reactive, one is informed. Third, if I were the higher earner in a marriage, I would treat my claiming age as a household decision, not a personal preference. If my spouse may live 10 or 15 years beyond me, and many spouses do, then I am not just deciding what I collect. I am deciding what they may inherit in the form of monthly income. Fourth, I would map the golden window on paper before filing anything. Not vaguely, not in my head. On paper, what would my taxable income look like if I waited? How much traditional IRA money could I convert at attractive rates between retirement and age 73? What tax pain am I accepting later if I claim early and let that window shrink? Fifth, I would look honestly at health and work, not heroically. Honestly, can I keep working without real damage? Am I preserving money while spending down life? Will waiting help me? Or will waiting simply produce a larger check in years when I may not want or be able to use it in the same way? That is not softness, that is intelligent asset allocation, because your remaining healthy years are an asset. Most people never put them on the balance sheet. They should. And now let me make the conclusion as plain as I can. If you are healthy, financially stable, and especially if you are the higher earner in a marriage, delaying benefits can be enormously powerful. You preserve a larger inflation-adjusted base. You protect the survivor benefit. You widen the golden window for Roth conversions. You reduce future tax pressure. You give yourself more margin later in life. That is the strongest case for waiting. But if your body is signaling that your go years are already underway and may not last, if work is actively wearing you down, if the practical value of earlier income in your early 60s is much greater than a larger check in your 70s, then claiming at 62 is not automatically foolish. It can be the right decision, not because the check is bigger, because the life is. The mistake is not claiming early. The mistake is claiming early because a simple calculator or a scary headline pushed you into a permanent choice you did not fully understand. And the other mistake is waiting only because people told you it was mathematically pure, even though the rest of your life was telling you something else. There is no perfect age. There is only the right age for your picture. If your picture says strong health, long horizon, spouse protection, and tax strategy, wait if you can. If your picture says narrow go window, physically costly work, uncertain longevity, and immediate life value from income today, then early claiming may be entirely rational. Just do not let a cartoon spreadsheet make the decision for you, and do not let anyone tell you. This is a simple choice between smart people and impatient people. It is not. It is a choice between different risks. The people who make it well are not the people with the fanciest calculator. They are the people honest enough to look at the full machine and brave enough to admit what season of life they are actually in. That is the decision. Not 62, not break, even versus impatience, life versus formula. And formula, left alone, wins too often.